All right, so get ready to dive deep on the BN crew.
Okay.
Because today we are going right to the heart of their chaotic history
Good.
to try to answer a question that's been plaguing fans, I guess, for years. What are they actually all about?
Well, what's so interesting to me is that even with, a mountain of articles and leaked documents and firsthand accounts, the BN crew still manages to feel like this unsolved riddle, like wrapped in a mystery inside a really loud, slightly sticky enigma.
It's true. And they've got this almost mythical status, especially for a band that most people, I think, outside certain niche circles, let's say, have never even heard of.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. Like, how does a group this BN crew, how do they manage to simultaneously court mainstream success, but also exist in this weird self-made bubble of obscurity? It's crazy. They're allergic to conventional fame.
Okay. So for those who might not have had the, shall we say, pleasure of experiencing the BN crew's unique brand of mayhem, let's rewind to their origin story. We're talking late 90s Dublin. What were the early days like?
Okay. Picture this. The Celtic tiger is roaring. Riverdance is taking over the world.
Yeah.
And somewhere in a dingy North Dublin basement,
a
group of lads, fueled by questionable substances, and honestly, even more questionable musical taste, are giving birth to the BN crew.
And the music itself, from what I've gathered, unique, doesn't even begin to cover it.
That's putting it mildly, honestly. Early recordings, they were made using whatever they could get their hands on. CD players, a pen with an earphone taped to it as a makeshift microphone. We're talking DIY, taken to a whole new level of, let's just say, innovation.
I've seen descriptions ranging from unlistenable to a sonic car crash you can't look away from.
Yeah, and yet, even within all the chaos, there are these glimpses of actual musicality. You listen to Wipin', their early track. It's got this raw energy. It's almost a punk sensibility, but then it's buried beneath all these layers of feedback.
Yeah.
Is that a blender right here?
Maybe, but there's this weird catchiness to it, almost like they stumbled onto a melody by accident, while trying to break every musical rule in the book.
Cool. What?
And then there's the legendary Tippin' the Cow album, originally titled Smells Like White Spirits, which tells you a lot about their creative process.
The name change itself speaks volumes. They suddenly realized, hold on, we're not just making noise here. We are actively trying to overturn the apple cart, or in this case, kip the cow.
And leading this charge into the heart of musical anarchy is none other than the infamous Dr. Leo. Now this guy seems like a whole other level of fascinating, even for the BN crew.
Dr. Leo is the embodiment of their chaotic energy. Yeah. He's been described as a musical mad scientist, a visionary, and, well, there's no delicate way to say this, but a few sources use the word unhinged.
Which, knowing the BN crew, could be a compliment.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about some of the other key players. We can't discuss the BN crew without mentioning the Bean.
Right.
He pops up constantly in the source material.
Oh, he does.
Always shrouded in this weird mystique.
The Bean is a fascinating study in contrast. Sure. He's the band's court jester, their resident eccentric, prone to bizarre pronouncements and public displays of, well, let's just say he's not afraid to push boundaries.
He once bought a jar of urine in public, which I don't even know where to go with that.
It's best we don't try to unpack that particular incident.
Okay.
But it does give you a sense of the Bean's commitment to the bit, let's say.
Or maybe a complete lack of self-awareness.
Right.
It's a fine line with the Bean.
It is.
And I think that's what makes him so intriguing. He's this constant wild card.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's Seb, another founding member who deserves a deep dive all on his own.
Oh, Seb, the coma-prone visionary.
Yes.
The sources mention multiple instances of him just slipping into these unexplained comas, only to reemerge with even stranger ideas and this renewed sense of purpose for the BN crew's, quote, mission.
It's almost like he's channeling something from those comas.
Yeah.
Or maybe the sheer force of the BN crew's weirdness is just too much for his brain to process all at once.
It's like the universe keeps trying to hit the reset button on Seb, but the BN crew is just too strong a force to overcome.
And speaking of strong forces, we can't forget Dr. Edgewild. He enters the picture a little later on.
Yeah.
Things get interesting.
Dr. Edwild, the self-proclaimed Nazi sympathizer and media pundit, a combination you don't see every day. What's his story?
Well, his role in the BN crew is complex. He seems to act as a catalyst for a lot of their conflicts,
right?
But also kind of pushes them creatively in these unexpected ways.
The sources mention some tension with Dr. Leo, something out of bathtub.
Ah, yes. The infamous Dunlock hair baths incident. Let's just say it involved a misunderstanding, a rubber ducky, and a very public display of displeasure.
Of course it did.
Of course.
So we've got Dr. Leo, the musical mad scientist, the Bean, the agent of chaos, Seb, the coma-prone oracle, and Dr. Edgewild, the whatever he is. How does this group of misfits go from a Dublin basement to wherever it is they end up?
Well, that's where things take an even weirder turn. In 1997, they embark on this trip to Tipperary.
Okay.
The trip that will change everything.
The trip to Tip sounds innocent enough. What could go wrong?
Everything. And I mean everything.
Oh, boy.
This trip becomes the stuff of BN Crew legend.
Wow.
Hamhead becomes public enemy #1, Disco Light swears off prescription eyewear, and the band's descent into glorious chaos kicks into high gear.
It sounds like the kind of trip that could spawn a million bizarre stories.
Oh, it does. And from there, things just get wilder. But we'll delve into the madness of the trip to Tip a little later.
All right, so stay tuned for part 2, where we'll unpack the trip to Tip, explore the origins of the backlash, whatever that is.
Yes.
And try to make sense of the BN Crew's unique brand of musical mayhem.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Welcome back. Last we left off, we were teetering on the precipice of the BN Crew's infamous trip to Tip.
Right?
Can you set the scene for us? What kind of chaos are we talking about here?
Well, it's fascinating. You know, the trip to Tip is this, like, pivotal moment in their history.
Right.
Almost like a creation myth for the band.
Wow.
It's where their casual disregard for normalcy becomes weaponized in a way.
The source material mentions Hamhead, Disco Lights, and the Backlash all coming into play during this trip.
Right.
What exactly went down in Tipperary?
Honestly, the details they're murky, fueled by, like, conflicting accounts, and a healthy dose of what I can only assume is exaggerated storytelling.
Which, knowing the BN Crew, is probably how they'd want it.
Precisely. But what is clear is that the trip begins with a seemingly simple goal. Find a mystical pub that's rumored to serve the best pint of Guinness in all of Ireland.
Right.
What follows is, well, imagine a cross between, like, a pub crawl gone very wrong, a fever dream, and a low-budget action movie.
Yeah.
And then throw in, like, a healthy dose of slapstick comedy for good measure.
And this is where the Backlash comes in.
It's hard to say for sure if the Backlash is like a cause or a symptom of the BN Crew's chaos.
Right.
But it features heavily in the trip to Tip narratives.
Yeah.
Imagine a series of increasingly improbable events. Freak weather, sudden illnesses, encounters with farm animals that probably shouldn't be happening.
So basically they're like bad decisions manifest in the real world.
Yeah, pretty much. Like their energy just sort of warps reality around them.
Wow.
It seems like every member has their own theory about what the Backlash actually is. Some see it as karma. Others see it as a shared delusion. And a few, like Senior, seem to view it as this weird sort of like badge of honor.
Right. Senior, who won BN Crew Man of the Year in 2011 despite getting trench foot.
Exactly.
Speaking of the BN Crew's unique brand of recognition, it's around this time that their career starts to, well, I hesitate to say take off.
Right.
But it definitely leaves the ground for these brief, chaotic moments.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Success, or even the hint of success, it can be a volatile thing for a band.
Right.
And for the BN Crew, it seems to have just accelerated the cracks that were already forming in their dynamic.
Like that whole Splinter group, the Meat Beat, what was that about? Just a couple of guys who really liked a good meatloaf?
Don't let the name fool you. While they did have a documented fondness for meat-based dishes, the Meat Beat represented a growing faction within the BN Crew who felt limited by the band's, let's call it, fluid approach to genre.
Right, because amidst all the chaos, there is actual music happening.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We touched on Wipin' and Tippin' the Cow earlier.
Right.
But they've got this whole discography that's just as all over the map as their personal lives.
It's true. They've dabbled in everything from, like, punk-infused electronica to what can only be described as experimental jazz.
Wow.
And they'd be recording in, like, unconventional locations with questionable equipment. It's no wonder their sound is so distinctive.
And yet they've had moments of, like, genuine musical brilliance.
Right.
So the Ballad of Muttonhead, their foray into freeform jazz, is, like, weirdly compelling, especially considering Muttonhead supposedly launched his jazz career after being disqualified from the Special Olympics for being too able-bodied.
That anecdote, like, pretty much sums up their whole relationship with the conventional music industry.
Yeah.
They're constantly subverting expectations, even if it's by accident.
It's like they're allergic to taking themselves too seriously,
Right.
which is probably for the best, considering what happens next.
Ah, yes. The power struggles begin. This is where the real drama unfolds.
And when egos like Dr. Leo's and the Beans are involved,
Yeah.
you know it's going to be messy.
To put it mildly, we see the rise of Gapford,
Okay.
the self-proclaimed visionary with a penchant for, like, elaborate schemes involving, among other things, windshield wipers and a very specific brand of herbal tea.
Classic Gapford.
Oh,
And of course, this puts him directly at odds with Seb,
yeah,
who's just emerged from another coma
of course.
with a head full of, like, new pronouncements about the band's destiny.
And let's not forget about Dr. Edgewild, who's busy building a bed,
Right.
or at least, like, talking about building a bed.
Okay.
The source material it's unclear on whether the bed was ever actually constructed, or for that matter, why he felt compelled to build it in the first place.
It's those little details, the
Fine.
ones that make you go, wait, what?
Yes.
That make the BN crew so fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But back to the power struggle. With Seb vying for control, Gapford pushing his own agenda, and Dr. Leo, well, being Dr. Leo, things escalate quickly. Alliances are formed, betrayals are swift, and through it all, the backlash looms large, adding another layer of absurdity to an already chaotic situation.
It sounds like the BN crew equivalent of, like, a Shakespearean tragedy.
It really does.
Or maybe just a really, really good episode of Spinal Tap.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got power struggles, splinter groups, a healthy dose of the backlash, and a bed that may or may not exist.
Right.
Where do we even go from here?
Buckle up, because this is where the B&Q crew story takes a turn for the truly Shakespearean.
Oh!
We're talking full-blown band warfare.
Wow.
Complete with shifting alliances, bizarre pronouncements, and enough bad decisions to make even, like, the most seasoned rock historian scratch their head.
From what I've gathered, they dubbed this whole debacle the BN crew uncivil war.
It was not a civil war.
What were the major battle lines, so to speak? Who was fighting who, and maybe more importantly, why?
The why is a bit of a moving target with the BN crew.
Right.
It's like they thrive on this conflict even when they're the ones orchestrating it.
Yeah.
But at the heart of the uncivil war seems to be this fundamental clash between Seb's desire to, like, reclaim his leadership role
Okay.
and Hamhead's, shall we say, unconventional approach to running the band.
Let's not forget Gapford, who's still out there somewhere, presumably plotting his next move with a stockpile of herbal tea and a head full of windshield wiper-related schemes.
And Gepford's a constant wild card.
Yeah.
Even when he's not directly involved, his presence is felt, like a low-frequency hum that throws everything slightly off kilter.
Right.
But as for the main players, you've got Seb. He's, like, rallying his forces, which include the eternally bewildered Dr. Edgewild, the ever-stoic Octobeak, and this new character, well, James, fresh out of prison for a crime. Sources delicately describe as indecent childrino TTC.
Right, because nothing says ready to fight for the soul of a band like a recent prison stint for. Yeah, I don't even want to know.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And what are our fearless leaders doing amidst all this chaos? How do Seb and Hamhead wage war BN crew style?
Well, Seb attempts to win hearts and minds by issuing a big beat manifesto.
Which, knowing Seb, was probably written on the back of a pizza box during one of his post-coma epiphanies.
The exact contents of the manifesto, they remain lost to history. But knowing the BN crew, it probably involved a healthy mix of, like, revolutionary rhetoric, questionable musical theory, and maybe a diagram or two that wouldn't look out of place on a conspiracy theorist's website.
So much for winning hearts and minds.
Right.
What about Hamhead? How does he assert his dominance?
Hamhead, ever the pragmatist,
Okay.
fortifies his compound in Glasnevin, fearing a siege from Seb's forces.
Right.
Interestingly enough, he's sharing this compound with a captive Gapford, whom he occasionally consults on matters of strategy and, bizarrely, interior design.
Of course he is, because nothing says hostile takeover like a little forced cohabitation with your arch nemesis.
Exactly.
What could go wrong?
You'd be surprised. Or maybe not, considering this is the BN crew we're talking about.
Right.
But amidst all the absurdity, the uncivil war does have its share of casualties.
Oh, no.
There were mysterious disappearances, freak accidents, and even a case of someone getting taken by the rapture in the middle of a business lunch.
Oh, poor Kev.
Right.
I'm not sure if I should laugh or be genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
So, with all this chaos unfolding, did anyone manage to actually make any music?
Oh, absolutely. Even in the midst of a full-blown band war, the BN crew never loses sight of their artistic aspirations.
Okay.
We're talking impromptu recording sessions in kitchens, attempts to hijack the Christmas #1 spot in May with a song titled The Christmas Log. Even a brief but passionate campaign to get wind chimes recognized as a legitimate musical instrument.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Because what's a good band war without a few bizarre creative detours?
Exactly.
But eventually, all wars must come to an end.
Right.
How does the BN crew uncivil war finally play out?
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question. The source material gets a little hazy on the specifics.
Right.
But it seems like the whole thing just sort of fizzles out.
Of course it does. It's the most BN crew ending imaginable.
Right.
No grand finale, no clear winners or losers, just a gradual return to their baseline level of chaos, as if nothing ever happened.
Which begs the question, was it all just a carefully orchestrated publicity stunt? A cry for help? Or maybe, just maybe, the BN crew's unique brand of performance art?
Perhaps we'll never know for sure.
Right.
And that, I think, is the beauty of the BN crew.
Yeah.
They're a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside a really loud, slightly sticky enigma.
It's true.
And after diving deep into their world, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Me neither. It's been a wild ride.
It really has.
It just goes to show, sometimes truth is stranger and far more entertaining than fiction.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Oh.
But here's a little something to ponder.
Okay.
In a world saturated with information, how can a band this bizarre, this chaotic, this demonstrably not safe for work, how can they still remain such a fascinating enigma?
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
I'll leave you with that thought.
Okay.
Until next time, keep your ears open, your BS detector on high alert.
Nice.
And remember, when it comes to the BN crew, sometimes the only answer is, why not?